Did you know that over 90% of a typical user's apps are dormant or inactive? Yet reactivating just 5% of these users can boost your customer base by 35 to 40%.
I have to make several 10, 20, 30 decisions a day with very little context, which means probably 50% of those are wrong. That is the biggest bottleneck for businesses.
Hi everyone, I'm Jas, co-founder of Propel and the host of this webinar. And I would like to start today's session by asking and sharing some very interesting data points. Did you know that over 90% of a typical user's apps are dormant or inactive? Yet reactivating just 5% of these users can boost your customer base by 35 to 40%. At Propel, we analyze over 10 billion events every month, trying to pinpoint exactly where do businesses lose engagement. Our research shows that engaging users, winning them back, is a very efficient strategy. And we are on a mission to educate people about the same and help them tap into these dormant users. And that's why today we are hosting Staying Alive, Dormant Users Aren't Dead. And I couldn't have asked for a better host than Uttam Kumaran. He's the founder of Brainforge and is helping companies deploy and solve their data problems. Uttam, I'd love for you to share a bit about yourself with our attendees.
Yeah, thank you. Brainforge is a company I started about 2 years ago. My background is in data. I worked as a data engineer, worked as an analytics engineer. I led data teams. So I kind of did every job from the ground up in data. And I was leading product at a data company before. And after that role, I was sort of deciding what to do next. However, one of the things I realized after seeing so many opportunities and companies, there's so many patterns in data that I felt many clients were never going to get access to because it's very hard to hire full data teams. It's also very hard to get it right. And so I felt like, at that point, you have a little bit of ego and you say, hey, I think I know something that some people don't. Let me think about starting a company. But I think, the fact that we've been in business for 2 years shows that I think we were onto something. So we help companies measure their businesses and ideally make more decisions and more accurate decisions, right? And for a business, that means more money or less costs, right? We just put it out there. So we try to sell to the operators and to the C-suite in the company, and our tools are data and AI to achieve, those outcomes. Whether it's data infrastructure, helping them measure, creating reports, implementing agentic workflows, things like that.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks a lot, Uttam, for sharing that. What what are couple of or let's say top three problems that typically your clients are coming to you with respect to their data infrastructure right now?
Yeah, so usually people come to us because there's kind of two areas we find people. One is they are graduating and they've been running their business on spreadsheets or internal dashboards within Facebook ads or within a tool, and they need some way to consolidate things. And that's where they are. So they don't know how to do that. And so for them, they need someone, typically either a head of data or a really, really enterprising data engineer, to come in and decide on all those tools, make sure they get those for great prices, hook those all up, implement like a data warehouse, a KPI strategy. So that's where we typically come in. Typically, we work with businesses anywhere from 20 to 100 million in revenue. So these are not pre-product, pre-revenue businesses. These are companies that have a product in market, are making money, and want to move faster. Additionally, we come into situations where folks have already hired, but maybe they're not happy with the setup or they're not seeing the outcomes that they need. That could be because they have the wrong tools. That could be maybe just they don't have the right data team structure. They don't have stand-ups. They don't have retros. They don't have feedback, version control, PR reviews. So we come in and also basically deploy a full stack data team where sometimes we bring on those team members from our clients into our process and we run that company's entire data stack. And data is a service organization, right? So we support the finance team, we support the marketing team, we may support the inventory and sales teams. So we kind of systematically go meet all the key stakeholders, understand what are their like first, second, and third degree questions, and make sure that we have both the short term ability to answer those, but we're also setting up their long term infrastructure. Many clients don't know how to buy and set up all of that, right? Because these are typically at least 5 or 10 tools, right? So you need a data warehouse. What do you do for data modeling? What do you do for BI? What do you do for ETL? Okay, you need an amplitude or a mix panel. You need a CDP. Like I only know this just because we do this every day, but it's extremely hard to hire somebody who knows how to set that up and can do it in any timely manner. And so that's why I think, one of our key, value props is to our clients is that we can come in, give you that plan, take what we've learned from so many of these engagements. And additionally, we work with all those vendors. So we have a great ability to get you a great discount, great support from those folks, and hopefully like set you up with the right sort of long-term infrastructure.
Right, right. Got that. That makes a lot of sense, Uttam. And I'm sure there have been companies that have been trying to do this or solve this. But from my understanding, what separates, let's say, your approach is that every client gets sort of white glove treatment where it is like a typical consulting business, but baking it with technology and ensuring that once it is set, the automations are in place and they don't require as much data engineering as they go ahead, right?
Yeah, correct. I think all of our so we're talking about life cycle, like there's a life cycle of a client, right? And typically we come in, we have to solve two problems at the same time. We can't come in as consultants and say, okay, yeah, well, these problems, give us 6 months and we'll get back to you.
Right.
Within a week, there has to be something that we show them, right? So we balance short term, which is like this report isn't working, or this integration between something and Amplitude isn't set up, or our events aren't firing, right? We solve that. The second piece is okay. Can we need to audit their entire stack? Like, what are the contracts? Who made the decision? Was the who is our stakeholder? So we kind of play both games at the same time. So we gain a lot of trust with our clients because, like, I think, dissimilar to many consultants, we just try to act fast, give them a quick
Right.
win. But also, I know what the best long-term infrastructure setup is, and we try to accomplish that as well. So that when they go to hire, when they go to bring on senior leadership and someone says, "Hey, I would love to know more about our stack," I want them to be like, "Wow, we made the best decision. Like whoever set that up did a great job." Right? That's what I'm sort of going for. And sort of that's those are both of the things we tackle. And for a lot of our clients, it starts off as a lot of data engineering, data modeling, but eventually it graduates to mostly analysis and mostly support for if there's a new service line or a new vendor that they need to bring data in from, or migrations or deprecation. So that's sort of like what the long tail of data work is. Again, that typically takes 6 months to a year to accomplish. For any, even the most productive teams, it's really difficult to get there.
Yeah, I think clients do sometimes feel that it should not take so much time. But as lifecycle marketers at Propel here, we also understand and realize how important setting up right events and infrastructure is. I think that is where sort of our worlds meet, where for us to do anything, our foundation is correct data flowing from system A to system B. And we treat lifecycle marketing being equal parts art and science, trying to bring creativity while being grounded in numbers. And having a right infrastructure is very important. So, from your perspective, and let's say from Brainforge's perspective, what would be the foundational sort of data infrastructure companies need before they can truly excel at lifecycle marketing?
Yeah, so on the data side, again, I think when we make vendor decisions on stack, it's really dependent on a couple of factors. Budget, it's dependent on like immediacy, like what needs to get solved today. It also definitely depends on who the characters are in the movie, right? Like who is on their team. Do you have like marketers that are going to be in there tweaking events in Amplitude, or is there just like an executive team and nobody on the technical side? So I think a lot of other consultants may say like we always do this or we always do that. We don't we don't take any kickbacks from our vendors. So I kind of want to build a solution that is a great engineering solution. It's a mix of tools that works for that client. So those are the questions we ask. Okay, what is the budget? If their budget is like just like $1,000 a month, okay, we have something we can work with. Of course, we will try to show them why it's worth investing there. But as engineers and as the data team, we have to prove to the company what the ROI is on investing in great tooling and great infrastructure. Yes, you can run things on Redshift or Informatica or like, very legacy tools, but where is the cost coming from? Okay, it's going to take a long time to debug things. Okay, they're going to try to lock you into really long contracts. nobody you're going to hire is going to love their job because they're working on old tools, right? So those are the things that I try to convey to our clients. But typically, what we recommend is one, you need some way to pipe data in and around. So you need an ETL tool. Common tools like Fivetran, like Polytomic are things that we recommend. Again, it just depends on your budget. The second piece is you need somewhere to land that. So either that's in a data lake, which very common is S3. That could also just be in a data warehouse. Really, the key kind of products there are like Motherduck, Snowflake, BigQuery. So you want someplace to land and store that. You also want to understand your modeling layer, right? So commonly we do all of our work in DBT. DBT is just sort of a querying language, structured language where you could write SQL and you can structure orchestration of models and logic. You want that to be stored. So for example, how are you defining an active customer? Okay, active customer has 5 clicks and 3 sessions and this, right? That's business logic. You want that to be defined somewhere and codified, in your in DBT and in a version controlled environment. And then finally, it's the BI layer. So what does reporting look like? Are there going to be people? Is this self-service reporting? Are people going to come in and query? Is this pure executive reporting? Is the execs just going to get a report once a week? Right. So then we make decisions on Tableau, Omni, Looker, Rill, there's Sigma, there's a whole host of options there. But that layer is very subjective. So it's really, really depends on who the stakeholder is and what they need. Lastly, also it's what is being coined as like a reverse ETL, but also just like sending information from your warehouse out to tools, right? So this is sending information back into Segment for marketing purposes, sending information into Klaviyo for segmentation, right? To do different things. Like for example, if you're able to calculate like a lead score, and you say, hey, this person, given their actions in your product, we can predict that they're right for an upsell. As lifecycle markers, you may want to then target that person, right? So you need to take that score, get it into Klaviyo or Retentive or wherever, and then an email needs to get triggered, right? But that flow, there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get that right, not just like ad hoc, but every time. And so you need to calculate that somewhere. You need that to get sent accurately. You then need a great relationship between the data and the marketing team. And then some trigger has to happen. And then you also need to measure when they get that triggered, are they actually converting? So there is this sort of life cycle of the data as well that is really, really important to understand. But there are options within the whole stack, and we have several assets that we provide about what tools that we recommend and why at various different price points. But usually we find a way to at least get people on the right track. And then as they graduate, they can move things in and out. But this is also the thing I tell clients is some of these are very hard to migrate off of. You choose something like Redshift or you choose a really tough vendor, you're going to be really in a tough spot in a year or two. So trying to make the right decision, maybe starting off on a free or just very small plan is much better than going with a vendor that you have to stick to that is going to really hurt your business long term.
Got it, got it. So in simpler terms for some marketers who are not so data
Sure.
fluid, I'll just translate that by
Please.
as marketers, just we need to look at where the entire life cycle of data and which begins from, let's say, the source, which may be an business interaction. Try to map it into all the different use cases where you would need the data, eventually leading to reporting and, let's say, segmentation being the end use case or personalization being the end use case. Understand where you will get that data from, how will you store it, and how are you going to eventually pass it to, let's say, identify your most suitable segments for improving activation or churn or whatever is the business use case. So that would be a
Yeah.
simpler translation of that.
Yeah, and maybe one thing I can also talk about is just like how as marketers to work with a data team. I think in the exact way that you put it is how you should explain it to your data team. Because commonly marketers will think, well, I just have to ask the data team, like, can I get this column or can I get this value? Explain to them the question you're trying to answer, because leave it to
Correct.
them partly to figure out the solution. If you give them a very narrow scope, like, hey, I need this column here, most people will just build just that, but they're not considering a process where they may need to do that and support many different team members. So if you come in and say, hey, we want to be able to target users that drop off from this product feature.
Exactly.
Okay, then let them propose a solution to solve that, because ultimately as marketers, and I worked with them, you'll then ask about the next thing, right? So if you build just one point solution, it's not going to translate to every time you want to pull a feature event or some type of drop off into another marketing activation tool. So that's a great way for those teams to sort of collaborate, starting with like what is the business problem we're solving.
Right. Right. Team collaboration was one key point I wanted to actually discuss. And since we are on that, so do you feel that as marketers, we need to have a basic level of data fluency? And if yes, what would be, what would that look like? So let's say people who are struggling with communicating with the data teams are actually able to sort of bridge that gap.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's also like a lot of answers to this. I'm pretty opinionated because I learned data completely on the job. So I didn't have like a formal education in like Python or in writing SQL. But I would say the number one thing to learn is just learn SQL. It's really close to English. You could learn it. You can just learn it slowly in an afternoon. I think that's a great way for you to build empathy and camaraderie with your data team is you can just write a little bit of SQL. What does that help you accomplish? When you go to your data team and say, "Hey, I want to move," I have that question, right? Like, let's start with saying, "I want to know how many people click on the nav bar and then drop off." Let's just start with that example. It would be one step easier if you could actually just share, and here is the query I wrote that identifies that, right? That actually allows a data team to they are gonna have to go do that themselves, probably get it wrong, then probably come back to you, give you a wrong output. There's gonna be a lot of back and forth. If you can write that query and hand it to them and say, "Here's a business problem. Here's some exploratory data work that I did." That could be in Snowflake or in BigQuery. You hand them that, they're gonna be a lot happier. So SQL, I would say, is really kind of like all you need to know. I wouldn't bother learning Python, wouldn't bother learning anything else. Really, I would just focus on writing SQL. Second is ask for access to the database. Ask for access to BigQuery or Snowflake. Just say, hey, I would love an account. I'm interested in these types of questions. Wondering if you can walk me through where I can answer them or any sample queries you have. I promise you, if your data team is great, they're gonna love that finally someone else is interested in running queries and answering questions themselves. Additionally, you may find that you can't get this from the BI tool. Like if you're using Tableau or using Looker, you may still need to wait for your team to set things up. You want to fish for yourself sometimes, right? It feels good to be like, "Oh, actually, I can go get that answer really quick." And so that's kind of like the process that I would kind of recommend is just try to learn a little bit of SQL, get access to where the data is, and that'll I think help speed up these requests, a lot faster.
Yeah, well said, Uttam. One point I'd like to add to that is, which has personally helped me, is understanding basics about what APIs are, what are server to server events, what are front end events, what exactly ETL, RETL means. So I think basic data structures and ETL, RETL understanding would really help marketers to sort of sometimes also push back. I think while being able to talk in their language is important, being able to push back becomes important because at times what happens is they are understanding something and we as marketers are expecting something. Now if I don't know what is going in, the feedback cycle becomes so long. I have to take a campaign live next week and now my event is not the way I had expected it to be.
But also when you explain to them like, "Hey, I need to re-architect front end events," I'm telling you, most people are going to be like, I don't even want to deal with that right now. Like that's a huge thing, but it may be as small as adding a snippet or just
Right.
changing a like so that's what is helpful if you have a little bit of understanding about the words that they need to hear because commonly when you hear things like we need a new API or need this, people are going to jump to conclusions. And a lot of time data teams are busy with a lot of things. So as much as you can help them, I also recommend using ChatGPT for this. Like
Right.
whatever is in your mind, ask ChatGPT to help you break it down on how to explain this to your data team so it doesn't shock them or doesn't cause them some overwhelm. Because when a data team hears about a new API, changing the front end, changing back end events, server, I'm telling you, it's like a trigger word. So that's what I would totally suggest is really explain to them specifically what you need, but also ask them for feedback. Like, on what are these things? Are we already doing this in our company? I'm sure there are already opportunities where someone has already asked for this. So you could build a lot of empathy that way too.
Got it, got it. One thing I wanted to, when you had mentioned, right, understand SQL. So I think a lot of companies have already made internal text to SQL agents. Otherwise, let's say companies like ours, we built a text to SQL agent for marketing. So where does that leave the need to learn SQL, right? As marketer, then if this is the future, would do I really need to learn SQL?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think without learning SQL, it's going to be very hard for you to even know whether the answer that your text to SQL agent gave you is right. Also, the text to SQL agent may say like, "I don't know how to do that," or "I don't think I can do that," and for
Mm,
you to continue to push back, it's the same problem. It's the same thing. You consider it like you're dealing with another human being. If you don't have the context, how do you know that what they gave you as a reply is correct? You can't. You have to have some level of knowledge. I think there will be these text to SQL agents that just make it easier for people to fish themselves, but you still need to know what questions you can answer. Like if without understanding SQL or understanding how to look at a database table and knowing, hey, I have these 10 columns, I can answer these variations of questions and then asking, it's very, very hard because the common things like how many orders did I sell today? How many page views did I have? You could already get that. You don't even need text to SQL. You could just open your dashboard and see that. So those are easy. These are more complicated things like I would need you to build a funnel drop off sequence and show me the churn rates at each step. That's a more complicated thing that I don't know how easy it is for text to for to accomplish. Additionally, what you'll find is the data is not always clean. Your columns are not going to be named appropriately. The tables are not going to be named appropriately. Maybe you're missing tables. Maybe you're missing a data source. Those are things that the text to SQL agent is not going to have any understanding about. So your data team is going to know that and is going to need to either document that somewhere or give you the context for you to interact with that agent well. So I still think there's a huge reason to learn. I do think that, however, all you're gonna get is it's gonna be like a 2 to 3x improvement using these AI agents if you know SQL and you're pairing with that. I don't think this is a replacement for analysts at all. I just
right,
think that the most boring basic analyst work is gonna get handed off, and
right.
people spend time answering tough questions, like doing really more hardcore analysis about funnel, drop offs, lead scoring, segmentation. Like that's where we want to spend our time as like data people, as lifecycle marketers, right? Not in like just answering ad hoc questions here and there or debugging.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, Uttam. One last question I had while you were mentioning in this team sort of collaboration section, right? So typically there is a data team centrally controlled or centrally managed, and marketers are supposed to sort of liaison with them as and when events are required or whatever deep links are required. Now, but let's say that has over a period of time that does cause a lot of delays, longer feedback cycles, so on and so forth. So do you think there is, let's say, a better way to structure these teams, maybe have martech pods, or maybe something innovative is up for coming, and we can practice it together maybe with some of our clients also.
Yeah, I mean, so this has been a debate in data for a long time as well, which is like decentralized versus centralized data teams. The natural evolution you see for many companies is they have a data team. They have maybe head of data, data engineer, data analyst, analytics engineer, and that person, that group serves everybody. What does that mean? It means everybody's problems are probably equal except for the executive. Maybe all their problems are the highest and everybody else is equal. Also, what you get is you get a lack of subject matter experts. Everybody in that group has to be an expert in every single thing, which means nobody is an expert in anything.
Let-
So naturally, the way people are like, okay, well, let's start to assign people to orgs. The problem that happens is managing a data team and having a data person in a marketing team are very different things. How do you judge that person? How do you promote that person? What are their KPIs? They don't like writing a line of SQL is not the same as seeing a decrease in CPM or a decrease in CAC. Like there are different ways to judge those people. You don't want to have a data person siloed on a marketing team because they need camaraderie within a larger data organization.
That's right.
And so what you'll find is that for the largest companies, like think like Spotify, Apple, they have decentralized data teams. Why? Because they can afford to. They can have 100 data people dedicated to marketing and then That's not the case for everybody, right? So where I think I would recommend is you have sort of subject matter experts in the data team that are sort of like the first point of contact, right? So you have someone on the data team that is the point of contact for marketing. Their job is to answer and triage all the marketing questions and then translate what the requests are. Right? For example, if you go to them and say, "Hey, I need a new integration," they can then talk to their data engineer, request that ticket. Versus if you go to the data engineer, that person may have 100 other tickets. They might not understand exactly what you're asking for. And you may just get put into a backlog. And so one of the things I would recommend for most data teams is you have people that are assigned to one business unit. That way they can go a little bit deeper. They can become the
Right.
expert in marketing data. They understand where event data sits. They understand where the customer data is. They understand all the reverse ETL procedures. And then there's someone else is assigned to finance, someone else is assigned to, another business unit. And I think that's probably the easiest way to handle that.
But final verdict, decentralized or centralized for a mid-market company with, let's say, 5 to 15 mil of revenue.
I would centralize. Yeah, a lot of companies decentralize very fast. Your data team will leave your company because they're isolated, sitting somewhere getting yelled at by a whole group of business people, and they don't have any empathy. They don't understand the data work. At that size, I don't think there's any point to start to split people up. So
Got it. So my last bit about this, and I ask this to everyone, is of course centered around AI and data engineering. I think a lot of talks have happened where people have said it is going to get disrupted, ETL, RETL, everything is going to get agentized, and you won't need, let's say, a data engineering team to do that. While there may be some merit in that, my personal opinion at least is that there are years to come till that happens, because on ground problems, as couple of what you mentioned, right, data is not labeled properly, it may also be incorrect at times, and there are a lot of such on ground problems. What, Uttam, would your vision be? Let's say, where do you think we are right now with AI getting incorporated in the entire data engineering process, and where do you see data engineering with, let's say, LLMs look like 5 years, or if 5 years is too much, maybe three years down the line?
yeah, I'm kind of expand the scope beyond just data engineering, but probably just like your data team as a whole. I think what you're gonna find is you're right. I don't think this is like don't hire a data engineer. I think what you're gonna find is you can probably have less and they're probably more effective with their time. Right. So I think that's number one. Second is my biggest interest and what I hope happens is that AI gets more involved in the decision making process. I started this call and I mentioned what our goal is to help people make more decisions and more
Right.
accurate decisions. That is the biggest bottleneck for businesses. Even in my business, I have to make several like 10, 20, 30 decisions a day with very little context, which means probably 50% of those are wrong. Those need to be more accurate, right? But how can I improve my ability to get reporting in order to make a more accurate decision or consult with an AI that has access to data to help me with that decision? So what you're seeing is that yes, if you put a bunch of context into an LLM and say, "Hey, I have this contract, I have these Slack messages, what should I do?" It can get you right, but you need that to happen across several different decision points dynamically for anyone in the company, right? That's a much more complicated problem than copying and pasting into ChatGPT and getting the results. But I think AI has a huge ability to affect that decision, like not really affecting can we write Python a little bit faster? Like that is all going to happen. That's fine. But I think what I'm more interested in is can AI help with a real bottleneck, which is an executive or an operator asks a question, the time between that question and their answer, and then their ability to ask the follow up, then get to the decision. That's what needs to get compressed. I think that is the like number one bottleneck. And we're going to find ways that people are doing that by just simply text to SQL. But again, there's also a lot of data that's not in the data table, right? They're in meeting notes, they're in your Slack, they're in your documentation, maybe they're in industry benchmarks. All of that needs to get made available to AI, plus your data to then help you make a decision. And that's going to start very simply like, should we pause this campaign? Like, should we consider segmenting our users this way? It's going to start simple,
Correct.
but then it should start to get bigger. Imagine you're able to run like your AI deep research on, hey, here's all of our users, all of the events. find the trends. That's something that you would give an analyst, right? And they would probably take like a
Exactly.
week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, come back. They'd probably say, I don't have the right data, or like I couldn't really figure like that is the alpha, I think. That I'm hopeful that I mean, I would love to try to solve that given some of our context in these businesses, but I feel like that's more of the way that I hope AI affects, data work.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Even in life cycle marketing, our hypothesis is that there may be less marketers required, and the marketers who are there are having much more skills, let's say, compared to what initially they had. And we call this time to insight and time to decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
Basically, if we are able to reduce that, I think that can really make a lot of impact. But one thing that Uttam you also mentioned was making AI a part of the decisions, right? Now, decisions are very critical, let's say, as an output itself for AI to be trusted on. So while we spoke about privacy, we've spoken about its potential. I think one key pillar with AI that comes to mind is trust. So how do you see that happening, where what will an AI need to do such that a data team is able to, or a business team is able to say that this answer is actually true, and I can go and make that decision what an AI is
No,
recommending.
it's a great question. So there's a huge gap between what I hope happens and kind of where we are now. But you have to start small. So one is you have to temper your expectations. This is not going to work on day one. Just because you did it in ChatGPT and it gave you a great answer doesn't mean it's accurate. Doesn't mean it can scale. And so you have to start very small, and you have to start with the basic questions. So a great way to do this. One thing we do for all of our clients on the AI side is we build what's called a golden data set. We build typically a 50 or 100 question answer pair document that we work with a team on, right? So you'll be surprised to know that what is an accurate answer, many people will disagree or not really have a perspective on that. So then
Right.
what are you running towards, right? If there's no goal. And so one of the things we sit down and do as part of our engagements is we say, great, we need to work with you to say, what are the questions and what are the answers or the types of answers that you would say this is accurate? That itself is a tough process to go through. That builds us what we call the golden data set, or basically that's our control data set. We then build LLM evaluations. So when an LLM answers, we then map it to one of those questions and score it based on several different, common scoring guidelines, which are not very common if you look up AI evaluations. And so we score every response. And our goal over time is, of course, to get our scores up, but it's also to tackle tiers of questions. They're going to be very basic questions like, again, how many page views did I get? How many orders, right? Those are basic. More intermediate, more advanced. Of course, the advanced is going to take time and nuance, pull from multiple sources, maybe these multi-step or different agentic multi-agent systems to do. But even if it's a zero, at least we have a measure. And then we slowly crack at it, right? Very similar. We just have to make sure that we have a scoring mechanism, we have a feedback mechanism from the team, and we have this kind of feedback loop. So what we do is we build scoring. We also then, when an AI responds to you in Slack, you as a user can actually give it feedback. Say, hey, this wasn't accurate. Here's why. That feedback actually comes back to our team, and then we can iterate. Okay, did it miss a data? Was our prompt incorrect? Was this not even in our first data set? Right. So usually it's the third where the team is like, this is inaccurate, but we never even considered this as a potential thing to ask. And so that's the iterative process, right? And that's the process that we go through. It takes time. There's no way around it. But like that's the way you start to crack. You crack this, and one day in a month you'll be through all your basic questions. Another 2 3 months you'll be most of the way through your medium, and then you can start going for the advanced stuff.
Got it, got it. And I would presume this would take, let's say, 3 to 6 months as complexity goes, and it would never end, right? There would be increasing
That's what you have
complexity,
to know.
data point
Yeah.
added. So
But
it is
that's
a
where you have to
never-ending
temper
process.
expectations, right? And that's for us. Like
Right.
we're not a software business, right? So there's a lot of AI product companies that are like AI data analysts, plug in your data, I'll answer any question. They're selling a dream. They're not like there's no way it's possible right now, right? It takes a lot of business context that is definitely not written anywhere. It's not in your code. It's maybe not even in meeting notes anywhere, right? And so I think consultancies like ours are in a really great position because in order to do our jobs, we go and ask 100 questions. We write all those down. We have to show our work. that's all great context for the AI, right? So we're, I think, in the best position to accomplish something like this, but it is unique to every client and it takes time. 100% takes time. But for us, I am, I don't want to sell a dream. Like I need this to work. And so for me, I have to sell an outcome and a timeline. Otherwise, we're going to get fired. Like I can't come in as a product company, sell it to you 100,000 things, sign you for a license, and then be like, oh, check in with support. Like that's not the way my business works.
Correct.
And so for us, I have to make sure that what I sell is going to work. And this is sort of what we've arrived on as what's possible today.
Got it, got it. One last bit I'm pretty curious to understand from you is, let's say, so there is one aspect which is answering your question. They may get complex as the data evolves. But the other aspect is AI taking decision or recommending something. Now, in my mind, there should be a threshold as to, let's say, there is immense trust, a lot of context, but still, do you see a future where, let's say, an AI recommends spend $100,000 extra on this campaign, and I guarantee you so and so lift, right? This statement itself, it might have gone through a lot of data context to bring out
Sure.
this statement. But would you go and actually, as a business, spend and trust that much amount of dollars to an AI?
I guess my pushback is how different is that to when you hire a growth marketing firm, you hand them $100,000. They tell you, we've looked through all the data, we can guarantee. How are those
Right.
different? Right. That's what my question back would be. Is it very, are they, how far? I think they're very different now. But I totally see that happening. I think in a lot of the bigger businesses, AI is already making these decisions. In fact, it's probably even dumber than AI. There's probably just rule-based thresholds on how to bid and spend. I think 100% AI is going to do that, but it's not like, again, it's an oversimplification on like, does AI need to do that? Is it better for it to just produce you three options and you make the decision, right? Do I go 100%? Just get me to the 90%. Give me all the details. I will make the decision. Yes, I do think some people will go 100%. There will be people that win. There will be people that spend and it kind of goes awry. But I think it's like if you trust a company to come in and you say, hey, I'm going to give you a budget, you're going to guarantee me a lift. And a lot of those companies never give you the information on how or the thesis on why, or they don't iterate, then this seems like at least a more better system.
Right.
I think like what's probably going to happen is you as a human should find out where in the loop you need to be. I don't think you're going to have an AI do this like end to end system without feedback. Very similar to when you work with a consultant in your team, you have to have check ins. You have to have human in the loop, is basically what this is called. Go research this. Okay, give me the results. Okay, here's the feedback. Okay, I'm going to move on to step two, step three, but still, you're having an AI do that. It's a huge win. Even if it's 30% faster, it's a huge win. I think some people now are seeing this like grand vision of it doing everything. But if in your business, if you can just do things 20, 30% faster, that's a great success, right? That's a huge efficiency gain. And I think that's like where people need to start and achieve that first before sort of looking at this as here's 100K, make me more money. That's a very complicated problem.
Right. Right. So all these talks around having outcome based sort of pricing, and even in consulting we see a lot of companies pivoting to that. I think with AI, efficiency becomes a very key metric that companies like ours can bank on and show our ROI on. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
I agree.
Perfect. Uh, all right, I can keep asking a lot of questions, Uttam. I'd like to see what the audience is up to and what have they asked. I've just opened a couple of questions from two folks that have asked the question. So Arpan is asking, what if someone has great engagement data but they struggle with attribution, especially for longer sales cycles? How do you approach multi-touch attribution in lifecycle marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for a lot of our clients, one, we recommend great tools like Northbeam or Triple Whale that kind of can house a lot of that attribution data. I think part of it is you just need to sort of start small. Don't try to solve the entire problem. Take a sale that you know, like where you have concrete understanding and a source of truth for what the attribution would, and backtrack that through your data. Find out if you even had all the data points to make
Mhm.
that conclusion. If the data is not there, then there's no way you would have even arrived there, right? So, for example, let's say you're selling ABC Corporation. You know, ABC Corporation came through a LinkedIn post. They then went, they did a demo, and then they came in. Okay, go through your data. Do you have the demo data? When they came onto the site, can you see their UTM parameter was LinkedIn? Okay, once you make sure you have all that, then it's up to your data team to start to stitch that together. But then you have to make decisions on first touch, last touch, priority, right? So those are the conversations you want to have. But I would start just like work on one lead, trace that back where you have the source of truth, ensure you can accomplish that, and then move. I think a lot of people start, but it depends on your scale too. If you're dealing with hundreds of thousands of consumers, you may just need an answer today and you just have to like turn on some attribution and go with it, you know? But I don't know. What do you think is a good answer?
I feel a lot of companies struggle with even having to backtrack that point, right? Let's say if a sale has happened, either I'm running it in a very strict control volume. What I have personally felt is if it is not done from a data point, multiple teams take claim to that. Okay, it happened because of, let's say, a
Yes.
product change. It happened because of, let's say, a change in performance marketing or email campaign. So it becomes pretty challenging, and I would say there is no one answer to true attribution may never be possible because you never know what the user got influenced from. But as marketers, as folks who rely on data so much, I am on the lookout of finding the ideal stack. That okay, if I find this stack, can I replicate it? For example, Mixpanel or Amplitude for product analytics is a stack that I can replicate across different products and sort of answer my questions. But when it comes to attribution, I'm still trying to answer what that ideal stack should be. So yeah, that
Yeah,
would be
I
my
agree.
take on that. I think Neda is asking a very interesting question. That's how Mixpanel also came to my mind. What she wants to know is how how do you answer the question of, let's say, building an in-house analytics platform?
I feel like my answer is it depends on budget, like, and it depends on your timing. Like, one is if you have very little budget and you just need a few events, it's pretty easy to architect like a couple events and put that. But also, is that the highest priority for your company to spend time and money there? A lot of these tools are very easy to use. There are even simpler tools than Amplitude and Mixpanel. Like you use Post Hog, then generous free tiers. Usually, if you're an ambitious company and you're making money, I would use a third party tool. Like, I don't think you should be building event streams, event analytics in house. You can do this with Snowplow. There are open source ways of doing this, but it depends on if you have a unique reason. For example, if you're selling that event data or if you're packaging that up into an analytics product, okay, there's a reason that maybe you need to build. For example, when I worked at Flowcode, it was a QR code product. Events were a huge part of our business. So I couldn't rely on a third party service that maybe had lags. We actually had to build our own event collection and event processing system. But we were selling that data and that needed to come real time. So there were SLA requirements and there was budget and a real product need. But without that, there's no reason. Would totally would have used another service to do that. So that would probably be my take.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, Uttam. One question I have again for you would be, when do you see marketers being able to sort of not rely on data engineers to create or modify events compared to the world that is there today?
Yeah, this is tough. It sort of really depends on like what your front end environment is like. I mean, to be honest, I think if you can get a clear SOP from your data or from your front end team on how they would do this work, it's pretty easy for you as a marketer to start to use Cursor to then go build one yourself. But what you need is like everyone's repo, like the repository for their code, everyone's setup is a little bit different. So you shouldn't just open Cursor and say, write this and ship something.
Right.
Y- you're gonna get laughed out of the room and then you're gonna lose some fate from your team. Instead, what you should do is you say, hey, it looks like we're gonna be requesting a lot of events. Wondering if I could watch you implement this new event or if you can write down the steps you did, then what you should do as a marketer is try to use Cursor, Windsurf, and give it those instructions. I'm pretty sure it'll get it right at that point, but you do need that SOP. Yeah, I mean, you could do this to that. Like this is how something happened today, but I would just be careful that you do this alongside your data team. Like, don't just like, yeah, build some empathy and explain to them what you're trying to do and why.
Right.
You can tell,
Right.
I don't want to bother you with these small fixes. Like, I'm happy to make this pull request myself. That's a great way of handling this.
Got it. Got it, Uttam. Yeah. So what I'm hearing, a quick gist of our conversation from a data expert to lifecycle marketers would be more empathetic. Don't
Yes.
just give an end solution. Rather, tell them the outcome that you are expecting. Upskill a little bit on the basics of how data works, so you are able to collaborate with your data team better. So yeah, I think that makes sense. It has personally helped me become a better teammate. I feel I don't know if it has made me a better marketer, but a better teammate for sure. So yeah, that is I think really helpful. So on that note, I just saw the clock. We've already 20 minutes over from our scheduled time. I would not like to further, let's say, infringe on your time. But Uttam, thanks a lot. I think it has been a very exciting conversation. I can keep on asking questions for another hour,
Thank you.
if not more.
Me too. No, this is really, really great. Yeah, happy to come back on whenever, or
Totally.
happy to be helpful however I can.
Yeah, and this has been a very different session from our normal ones because we mostly talk about strategies around how to win back users. But I think today, in this last almost 40-45 minutes, we could genuinely sit and talk about the core problems that we as marketers and you as, let's say, data experts also face, and how can we bridge that, and how can AI assist in that. So I think thanks a lot for that. It has I'm sure a lot of people are going to learn a lot after hearing to what you had to say.
No, thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks everyone for being here and being part of this webinar. A quick shout out to Uttam again. Uttam, where can people reach out to you? If you can just share a blurb, I think that will be helpful.
Yeah, feel free to go to our website, www.brainforge.ai. Also, you could just message me directly on LinkedIn. Again, this is all we do every day. So if you have a question on anything I mentioned today or any of the resources I mentioned about vendors, I guarantee you have an opinion. I guarantee you we've been burned. So please, I'm happy to give all that advice away. And yeah, those two areas are a great place to sort of find us and follow us.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Uttam.